Coal, big chunk of that, 22% coal. Nuclear 8.5%. And renewables, we're still pretty far down there, 7.4%. And a big chunk of that is either wood waste used in industrial applications or hydroelectric. Very little so far in things like wind and solar energy. So, not quite sure how to make it stop doing that. Sorry about that. The key note here, this little red arrow down there, from 1980 to 2008, we only increased that number. It was 7.4%. It was 7.1% in 1980. How are we going to get to 20% of our energy from renewable, and how are we going to get to 50%? We're not making much progress, right? So you can see nuclear took a big jump. You know, that's when all the nuclear plants came online back in the 80s. For electric generation, which is primarily what wind energy is used for, electric generation, you know, we may have some electric cars charged by wind energy, but for the most part, we're going to say, you know, it's used for our homes and things like that. So in the United States, we get about half of our energy from coal or lignite. So big environmental concerns right now. So not only the global climate change issues from carbon dioxide, you have a lot of other emissions coming out of there. Just the particulate matter alone, you got SO2, you got NOx, all those type issues associated with coal generation. So we still get 50% of our electricity in this country from that. Texas, it's a little less, it's more like a third in Texas. Natural gas in the United States, 20%. Almost half of our electricity comes from natural gas in Texas. So that's actually a good thing for the wind energy industry. So that's one of the reasons that wind energy is taken off in Texas. So and then you got nuclear, a little more in the United States, 20%, only 13% in Texas. We have almost no hydroelectric. Less than 1% of our electricity comes from hydroelectric in the state. 6.1% now comes from non-hydro renewables, and that's primarily wind energy. So that's where we're growing the most right now. Nationally, only 2.4% comes from non-hydro, so maybe 2% comes from wind energy. So nationally, so we've got a long way to go. The 20% by 2030 report from the Department of Energy, National Renewable Energy Lab, what they're saying is they want 20% of our electricity to come from renewable energy sources or from wind energy by 2030. So the Obama administration's kind of adopted that as a goal. The DOE now sees it as a goal. It was initially a report, now it's a goal. But, you know, we got a long ways to go. We're at 2% right now. So we want to get to 20. So just looking at renewable energy sources alone, in my slides, the color's got a little messed up here, I noticed earlier, so, but the green is biomass. So that's basically industrial processes like furniture mills and things like that. They're using their wood waste for their own industrial processes, or producing their own thermal energy or some electricity. The kind of, let's see, what happened to hydroelectric? It changed colors under there. Sorry. So like I say, the colors got messed up. Where it says 33%, it's supposed to be hydroelectric. So, and then wind energy, see that's about 7%. Now the key graphic on this slide though, is that arrow there. Look at the growth rate. The growth rate on the wind energy industry since 1990 has been 19%. And like I say, 31 and 33% the past 2 years. So that represents an opportunity. And that's why Texas Tech is really focused on education in the wind energy area. That means 19% growth rate means jobs in the future. So we look at our other sources. Solar is doing okay. I think solar off-grid may not be accurately represented here. I'm guessing that's growing a lot more than 2 or 3%. But hydroelectric actually going down. Biomass, geothermal, not much growth there. So our big growth right now is in wind energy. If we want a big chunk of our renewable energy, or of our electricity, to come from renewable energy, wind energy is going to be, you know, about it maybe. So. A lot of states have set goals already. So 28 states, including Texas, have renewable portfolio standards or renewable energy standards. Terminology, it means the same thing. They just, one's an RES, one's an RPS. 5 other states have goals. They're not really binding type goals. It's a state goal to encourage renewable energy in the state. And of course, nationally, we're looking pretty seriously at a federal renewable energy standard. Talk about the wind energy history of Texas. This is the very first wind project in Texas using utility scale turbines. I actually got to develop that or build that. I was director of research and development for an electric utility. In 1995, we built that as a research project. 6 megawatts. We use Zahn turbines. Zahn is basically now part of what's GE Wind Energy. So they grew a lot. That was the very first 12 turbines produced by the company that is now GE Wind Energy. So down the road from there, near Van Horn in the Delaware Mountains, was another project built just after that. So we started out there with 500 and 300 kW turbines. Fort Davis only had 6 megawatts. Look at where we are now. The Snyder Wind Farm has 3 megawatt turbines, or 3,000 kilowatts. The turbines at Snyder are 2.5 times as tall to the very tip of the blade there as those at Fort Davis were. And they're probably, I don't know, maybe 4 times as tall as those at Delaware Mountains. So, and the turbines are just getting huge. The Roscoe Wind Farm, now the world's largest, 782 megawatts. I spent the 3 years prior to coming to Texas Tech developing that. So I spent a lot of time in Roscoe, or the Holiday Inn in Sweetwater, I guess. So, but that's a huge project. All around Sweetwater is just incredible. Turbines everywhere. So this just kind of shows the size of the turbines there. There's the Zahn turbines. The ones out of Delaware Mountain were even smaller than that. So now you got the 3 megawatt turbines. You know, I've been in this industry long enough. There's Vaughn there. He's probably heard these same conversations. We'd sit around and say, man, it's never going to be economical to build turbines bigger than 1 megawatt. You can barely buy one now, you know, less than 1 megawatt, at least for these big projects. So, I wouldn't be surprised if a few years from now we're talking about 10 megawatt turbines installed on land. I mean, people are working on them right now for offshore, but, you know, I'm not going to rule out anything since we're recalling those conversations when we said they weren't even going to be bigger than 1 megawatt. So, you know, all the way from our 6 megawatt project out there at Fort Davis, look at these now. So 6 of the 7 largest projects in the United States, and I think probably the world too. I haven't verified that to see if there are any other projects in the world that are bigger than, say, 400 megawatts. But 6 of the 7 largest in the United States, they're all in West Texas, very close to Abilene, Sweetwater area. So, of course, those are small, actually, compared to a couple that are proposed, right? T. Boone Pickens, 4,000 megawatts. He's running into some issues on that, but last I heard, he's still saying he wants to do it. So, I don't know. He apparently has bought 1,000 megawatts of turbines that are coming here in the next few months. So, he's got to do something with them. And then Shell and Luminant, the Dallas-based utility, they're talking about a 3,000 megawatt wind farm. Whether those happen or not, I don't know. But our last wind power conference was in Chicago. There was a guy on the bus with me sitting next to me talking about a 1,000 megawatt project in Illinois. You know, so it's happening all over the United States, not just in Texas. But by far, the early ones, these big ones, have all been in Texas. So this is a circle with a radius of 75 miles around the Roscoe, Sweetwater area. 6,000 megawatts of wind generation. So that's what I was talking about when I took the German folks on the tour. We saw 10 projects just in a matter of a few hours down there. Big ones too. So it's just an incredible area. Confluence of good winds. You know, actually there are better winds even in Texas than the Sweetwater area. But it had a great confluence of transmission lines. Unfortunately, we even exceeded those. So we really need transmission lines there. So anyway, that's interesting. What this all means to Texas Tech, though, again, is jobs. So the Department of Energy and National Renewable Energy Lab, in their report on 20% wind by 2030, they estimate that to get to that 20%, there's going to be created almost 200,000 jobs directly in the industry. So directly means either in manufacturing, construction, or owning and operating the wind farms. So it's really